Hey friends, welcome to Devlog number 5. I've been wanting to do this video for a few months now, since a lot of time has passed since the last video. A lot of things have been happening both in and out of the project in that time, and I hope to share some of that with you in this video. I have continued to work on DropCube over the past few months, but it has slowed down a little bit as I've been on vacation to the United States, and I also participated in the Global Game Jam this year. More on that later. In the last devlog, I talked about a bunch of different topics, but one of the main topics I discussed was a refactor. I believe that implementation has shifted again since that last video, as it was getting a little bit complex. I'm currently reading this book, Game Programming Patterns by Robert Nystrom, and I'm learning a lot of new ways of organizing my code and getting it closer to what I was intending to get it without all the complex design. I haven't gotten all the way through the book, and there's definitely some things in here that I think would have been helpful to know before tackling the problem. For now, I've streamlined it a little bit so that it's working, and I'm moving on. As to my point in the last video, at some point you just need to put it down and press forward. So that's what I've done. I've taken my own advice and I've just put it down where it's in a working state and I've pushed forward. My main focus has really shifted towards getting this project across the line, as there are a few other projects coming up that I'm really excited to work on, and I want to try and get this one finished so that I can move towards those projects. More on that later. The next thing I said I was going to implement was the point system, with the points being projected on the back wall of the level, and you can see the points being incremented as you move through the level. I did manage to implement this and it appears to be working well. I have a few ideas on how I can polish this up a bit so it has some nicer game feel, but I'm not too worried about that right now. I think some animations with the numbers could go a really long way, as well as adding some calculations to the numbers so it doesn't appear like one number is just jumping straight to the next number, and you can see the numbers slowly increment up to the current score. Again, these ideas are just game feel ideas, and they're not very high on my priority list, so I'm not going to worry about them right now. Next up, I tried to get the game working on my phone, as that's where I plan to deploy it to. As you can see, I've got it working. It's not quite the latest build, but it is working and it's been quite handy to have on my phone. Don't worry, I will also be uploading a PC and Mac version to itch.io so that you can play it if you don't have an iPhone, but my main goal here was to try and develop a game that I can push to the iPhone store and then have people download on the spot whenever I tell them about it. It's been really handy having this version of the game on my phone, as there's been people that I've talked to that I've mentioned that I've been working on a project, and just being able to boot it up straight from my phone and show them exactly where the project was up to was really nice. It was really handy to have that, and I was able to get some instant feedback from people just as I was showing it to them. I'd highly recommend it. If you're ever working on a project and you think it can make it for your phone, just put a version on your phone. It didn't cost me anything to be able to have it on my phone, and yeah, it went a really long way. Highly recommend. Getting the game to actually work on my phone was a bit of a process. Thankfully, SamYam, who I think I've mentioned in nearly every single one of my videos, uploaded a video of this exact thing, so I will leave a link to that in the description below. Highly recommend checking it out. There's a few other tutorials that I've gone off of hers that I have used on this project, and there's another one that I've already got in mind for the leaderboards that I will be using, so highly recommend checking out that channel out. So yeah, having the game on your phone was really handy. I do hope to get a more polished version of the game onto my phone so that when I show people it looks a little bit more appealing to them. At the moment it's obviously just a bunch of cubes, which it's kind of meant to be. It was the design decision I went with, but I do want to kind of polish it up a bit, have some nice game feel, so that when they see it, it looks something a little bit more interesting than what it is currently. But again, focusing on mechanics at the moment, we're getting there. It's nearly across the line. So I really like to give a shout out to some resources that I like to use when I'm working on these projects. While I'm working on them, I tend to look around for different tools and resources, and I like to share them here when I can, because obviously they've helped me on my journey and I think they could be very helpful to you. There's also some tools that I come across that look interesting and I'd like to give a go. Maybe it's not right for me to give them a go yet. Maybe they might be right for you to give it a go. So I'd like to mention them here. There's two in this video that I would like to mention. The first one being a podcast. It's called the Game Dev Field Guide by Zachavelli. You can find it on Spotify, all your podcasting channels. I highly recommend that one. There's a lot of really good tips and tricks videos. There's some really great genre breakdowns, which I highly recommend. Just if you're looking for a game dev podcast that you want to listen to while you're at work, while you're commuting, highly recommend checking out Game Dev Field Guide. The second one that I want to talk about is codex.io. This is a one I haven't quite been able to dive into yet, but it's a project management tool for game devs. So your Jira, your Trello, your boards. Basically, when you've got tasks on a board and you want to keep track of what you've got coming up and what you want to tackle next, there's this cool tool called codex.io. Looks really interesting. Basically, they've merged that concept of project management with a card game where you can put Fibonacci numbers on a card. So if you're unfamiliar, basically you kind of estimate how difficult the task is going to be and you put a number like 1, 3, 5, 8, 13. You go from there and you just kind of estimate roughly how difficult the task is, and then you just kind of pick from them based on like what's most important or however you wanted to do the numbers on the cards. So having this kind of like gamified card game for your project management tool is interesting, I think, for probably a lot of game devs, as I imagine not many game devs are fully suited for the full suite of project management tools that software companies use. Like Jira is probably a little bit overkill for a lot of indie devs, but maybe something like Codex might be worth having a look at. I haven't had the chance to have a look at it properly yet. DropCube's a little bit too far along for me to spend too much time on it, so I'm not going to worry about it at this stage. But when that next project comes around, I'm definitely going to give it a go and have a play with it. So check it out, put it on your radar, and if you think it looks interesting to you, I highly recommend checking it out. Before we wrap up, I want to quickly go over my experience I had at Global Game Jam 2023. This was my first game jam, so it was really interesting to kind of dive in there, going in a little bit blind. I had seen what the theme was going into it. It was roots. When I got there, this was at a local university here in Perth. Just went there and didn't know anyone going into it. I didn't know if anyone I knew was going to be there. There was a handful of people that I didn't know that was there, but I ended up getting on a team of people and I didn't know any of them. We came up with a game idea together and we worked on it 48 hours and we pushed it out, and it's out and playable now. It was a really, really cool experience. I highly recommend it. I plan to do more game jams sometime in the future. If I can get another one in this year, that would be fantastic. So the game we made was a murder mystery horror game, sort of, around the theme roots. So the idea was getting to the root of the problem, but we also tried to tie it back to the theme as much as possible. So another thing that we touched on was the game took place in an abandoned hospital, and the idea was to try and identify the body of a patient based on their teeth. So their teeth was missing and scattered across the hospital, and there was some dental records on a computer, and some notes scattered around, and you can use that information to try and work out who the patient was, and then check the dental records and see who the doctor was. And then the idea was that the doctor was the one that mutilated the patient. So very interesting, very fun. The game is up on itch.io. It's called Routine Checkup. I'll have a link down in the description, of course, as well as the resources that I mentioned earlier. Very cool game. Thank you to Global Game Jam, SAE Institute, the uni that I was at that held the event, and Let's Make Games for organizing it. I'll leave links to them in the description below as well. Yeah. So what's next for DropCube? So I'm nearly across the line. We're nearly there. I've been working on a main menu screen as well, which I haven't included in this. I'll talk about that in a future video. But it's essentially just when the player dies, screen comes up, shows their score, and they can go back to the main menu, the leaderboard, so forth. I haven't implemented the leaderboard yet. I will be doing that too, so I'll cover that in the next video. After that, I just need to connect that up to the main game and then add some music, and that's pretty much it. That's been the main goal that I've been trying to get to, because from there you can boot the game up, click into the game, there'll be music, and there's the main game loop there working. You can get points, you can see it on the leaderboard, you can improve. That's the game loop. That's what I wanted to get done, so we're nearly there. After that, there are a few more things that I need to look at. The Switch is still a cube, which isn't very it doesn't look like a Switch at the moment, so I need to fix that up and add some animations to it. There's some general game feel things that I need to touch on. I want the cube to be stretchable and shrink when it moves. I talked about that in an earlier video. The points need some animation and something going on, just because they kind of snap a little bit as you move through the level, and that's not good. Yeah, there's a few more things that I want to do. Hopefully I can touch on all of that in the next video. That'd be great. I think music might end up being its own video, and then there'll be the menu and finalizing some of the game fill up in the video after that. So we're nearly there, and I'm looking forward to getting across the line. So thank you again for watching. Sorry it took a little bit longer to get this video out, but we're still moving along, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you.